What's up guys, Galaxy King here, and in today's video I've got my updated vampire deck profile. The new support helps this deck out a lot. It's a lot more fun to play, its end boards are stronger, the consistency has been buffed a ton, and it's overall just a lot better to play with. And I want to thank everyone for the feedback on my last vampire deck video. Deck profiles, sorry. That was really nice, thank you so much for all the feedback. That was really amazing. And I wholeheartedly believe that vampires and every zombie deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have rogue potential. Especially vampires now with the new support, as I'll go over in this video and in a combo video. But I honestly believe that vampires and every zombie deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! So Shiranui, Mayakashi, Vendread, Skull Servants all have rogue potential. So let's get on with the deck profile. So starting off with the one-off vampire monsters, I have one Scarlet Scourge, one Shadow Vampire, and one Vampire Grace. Just one of these is fine. I don't think I need a second or a third of any of these. If you want to play a second Scarlet Scourge, then I understand why. But just one of these is fine because the Vampire engine, while it has gotten a lot better than what it was before, it's still a little risky playing it. So just one of these is fine, and they're all searchable in the deck anyway with Vampire Ghost and Familiar, so you don't really need to see them in your opening hand all that often because they're searchable relatively easily. Shadow Vampire usually will be searching out Scarlet Scourge when it's normal summoned because there is a 2-card combo that revolves around all 3 of these that ends on your end board, which I will be doing a separate combo video for vampires because my last vampire video was half an hour long and there's a lot I want to talk about in the combo video, so I'll be doing a separate video for the combos. But their main effects are Shadow Vampire. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon any vampire from your deck, which is honestly really good. If it was normal or special summoned, then this card would be absolutely broken, but it's not, it's just normal summoned. But there are ways to get additional normal summons in this deck, which is really good. Grace is interesting. It's a new addition to the deck because the new support helps it fit in a lot more. You can use it to further extend your combos, and it helps you go into Beatrice because it is level 6. Its effect is when a level 5 or higher zombie monster is special summoned to your field by the effect of another zombie monster while this card is in the graveyard, you can pay 2,000 life points. Yes, I know that is a very steep cost, but then you can special summon it. And this potentially could be used in just any zombie deck that special summons zombies quite frequently, like just basic zombie world with Gloric Bloom and Bailodrox. So then you can chain this to special summon itself. Maybe, I don't see how you could, but if you want to try it out, go for it. And then Scarlet Scourge, very basic effect. The main effect we're looking at with Scarlet Scourge is when it's normal or special summoned, you can pay 1,000 life points, target a vampire in the graveyard, and then special summon it. So the majority of the time with your 2-card combo, which includes Vampire Ghost and either Familiar or Retainer, you would normal summon the Shadow Vampire, then use this effect to special summon Scarlet Scourge from the deck. Use Scarlet Scourge's effect to either special summon Grace or another vampire in your graveyard. If you're summoning Grace, then you don't need to pay the 2,000 life points from Grace since you're just summoning it with Scarlet Scourge. But if you are summoning a different vampire, you can then chain this to special summon it, and then you'll have 5 monsters on the field. You can use these 2 to go into Beatrice and the other 3 to go into Rusty Bardiche, which is honestly, Rusty Bardiche in this deck is absolutely incredible, and I'll go into even more detail in that later on. But just one of these, I don't think you need to run more than one of these. In testing, I never had a situation where I needed more of these because the Vampire engine is more of a supporting engine rather than a win condition. The win condition being Zombie World and your other zombie support cards like Zombie World, and just using Baladrock to pressure your opponent, because Baladrock is such a good zombie card. Then for the new support, I have Triple Vampire Ghost. This card helps the deck so much. It fixes so many of their problems. Its effect is, when it's normal summoned, you can send one other vampire card from your hand or face up field to the graveyard. You can't send itself directly, so if you normal summon this, you can't send itself while it's on the field to the graveyard. It has to be another zombie card. And then you can send a level 2 or lower vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard, so Familiar or Retainer, and then add a level 5 or higher vampire monster from your deck to your hand, which will either be Vampire Grace, Shadow Vampire, or Scarlet Scourge, depending on what your hand is like. And then its second effect is, you can banish this card from the graveyard, pay 500 life points, and this is a quick effect by the way, normal summon one vampire monster in addition to your normal summon. So the main combo is with either Ghost or Familiar or Retainer. You discard the Familiar to send a Retainer, and then you can search out the Grace. Discard the Grace to summon either Familiar or Retainer, and then use their effects to pay 500 life points, then get you another vampire card. That's just a preview of the combo, which I'm going to go into more detail in the combo video. I'm just explaining how the deck works in this video because it's the deck profile, and if I did combos in this video it would be stupidly long, so I'm just going to go over the basics of this deck in this video, and then in the combo video I'll go into a bit more depth. But this card, honestly, it fixes the deck so much, and I really do believe that this gives the deck rogue potential. Like maybe just at the bottom of rogue. It's still a bit fragile, but it is still a really fun deck to play with. And then for your main vampire search cards, I have Triple Vampire Familiar and Triple Vampire Retainer. Both are pretty similar and have really simple effects. When they're special summoned, and that can be by any way, it can be by their effects or the effects of another zombie monster or a card effect really. You can pay 500 life points. Familiar will get you a vampire monster, and Retainer will get you a vampire spell or trap. So most of the time the main searches you will get with these two, Familiar will get you Shadow Vampire, and Retainer will get you either Domain or Desires or Domination. But there are other targets you can search with Familiar, like Scarlet Scourge, Shadow Vampire, really depending on what the situation is like. And then another effect that they both have is, if this card is in the graveyard, you can send one vampire card from your hand or face up field to the graveyard, and then special summon it, but they're banished when they leave the field. One advantage that these cards have over most cards is that you don't worry about bricking with them too much, because their effect where you can send a vampire card from your hand or field to the graveyard, you can send another copy of themselves. So for example, they don't say, most cards will say you can special summon one monster except another copy of itself, or you can discard one card except another copy of this card. With these, you don't really worry about that. So if you have two Retainer in your hand, if you have a Retainer in your graveyard and a Retainer in your hand, you can discard the spare Retainer. So bricking isn't too much of an issue in this deck, although it is definitely there. And also, I want to bring up one mistake I made in my last vampire video, and I want to thank everyone who pointed this out to me in the comments, so just thanks for letting me know about this. It saved me a ton of misplays. In the video I did a combo where I summoned, it was either Familiar or Retainer, but it doesn't really matter, it's just a ruling that I was unclear on. So if I summon Familiar with its own effect that then banishes itself when it leaves the field, if I try to summon Retainer from the graveyard by sending this to the graveyard, I can't do that because this won't be able to go to the graveyard, and these require you to send something to the graveyard. So if I summoned either of these with their effects and I try to use the other effect to send it to the graveyard, I can't do that. That's an illegal move. So just thank you to the people who mentioned that to me. Really, it saved me a ton of time. Anyway, 3 of these are sort of mandatory, and they're a 2-card combo with Vampire Ghost. And that's it for the vampires. For the rest of the zombie monsters, I'm playing 1 Doom King Baelodrok. Only 1 because with the vampire engine, 2 was just a bit too bricky, and it's easily searchable with things like Glow Up Bloom. You can send it with things like Unizombie and Beatrice, so I'm not too concerned about just playing 1. It would hurt if this card was crowed or something similar like Dimension Shifter, but there are other cards in the deck and extra deck that can help compensate if we do lose this during a game. It's 2 interruptions in 1 as Zombie World is on the field, and it can keep bringing itself back so long as Zombie World or any field spell is in the field zone. So just 1, honestly just 1 was fine. If I want to play 2, then I understand why. I'll probably just end up deciding a second one if I take it to my locals for a tournament, but for the most part just 1 is fine. For the more generic zombie monsters, I have triple Unizombie and triple Shiranui Solitaire. If you're familiar with zombies, then you probably already know what these cards do. Solitaire, you tribute it to special summon Unizombie or Glow Up Bloom, depending on what the situation is, and then Unizombie is just a double Foolish Burial in 1. And both of these are probably one of the best normal summons or starters in the deck next to Vampire Ghost, since they speed the deck up a lot and just get everything started. And there is even a 3-card combo with Solitaire or Unizombie with Vampire Ghost and any vampire that you can discard. So Familiar, Retainer doesn't really matter, another copy of Ghost doesn't matter, so long as you have a vampire monster to get rid of. And that can end on a seriously powerful end board that I'm honestly amazed that this deck can make, especially with vampires of all things. But these are 3, sort of mandatory, honestly. And then for the others is 2 Nightward Banshee and then the 1 Glow Up Bloom. Banshee at 2 because we want to see Zombie World as quickly as possible. You banish it from the field or graveyard and then activate Zombie World directly from the deck. It's activate, not add to your hand, so it can't be ashed, which is really good. And also while it's on the field, Zombie World can't be destroyed by card effects. Doesn't come up a lot, but it's still nice to have. And then Glow Up Bloom, only 1, since we have a ton of other ways to send and search Baelodrok besides just Glow Up Bloom. The main way I've been sending or setting up Baelodrok with Zombie World is with Beatrice, with Scarlet Scourge and Vampire Grace. So only 1 of this is fine. We have other targets that this can summon as well. When it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish it and either add a level 5 or higher zombie, or if Zombie World's on the field, you can special summon it instead. So you've got Scarlet Scourge, which if it's special summoned, you can special summon a vampire from the graveyard. You've got a ton of other options. Well, not a ton of options, but you have options other than Baelodrok to summon with Glow Up Bloom. Then for the one-offs, I have 1 Gozuki, 1 Mizuki, and 1 Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. Mizuki, pretty basic, you banish it from the graveyard and then you special summon a vampire from the graveyard. Gozuki, sort of like another Unizombie. During your main phase, you can send a vampire, so any zombie from your deck to the graveyard, and then once this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish another zombie from the graveyard, special summon a zombie from your hand. So it's a really good starter and extender. At 1, again, these are fine at 1 because there are other ways of summoning your monsters. Like the vampires have ways of summoning themselves, so I'm not really too concerned about summoning them with these 2, since they sort of do their own thing, which is what I really love about the Vampire engine. It's completely independent, whereas most zombie cards rely solely on other monsters being zombies. Since sort of the way the whole zombie type is built rather than the vampire engine. What I'm trying to say is the vampire engine doesn't rely on the vampire type. They are the zombie type, I meant to say. They don't rely on the zombie typing, which is really interesting. So you could potentially just play pure vampires without any of the zombie stuff. I don't recommend that, because vampires are a lot better with Zombie World. But just the fact that the vampire engine doesn't rely on Zombie World or any other zombie cards, and they're completely independent and can support themselves pretty well actually, is really good. And I really hoped that other zombie archetypes would have done this. You do get that, but if you look at something like Shuinui as an archetype, they rely pretty heavily around certain zombies, Skull Servants to an extent, and Vendreads. And when I said that I believe that all zombie decks have rogue potential, I really do believe that every single one of them does. You look at Vendread, Skull Servant, Shuinui and Mayakashi, I all believe that they have rogue potential. Shuinui and Mayakashi probably more than Skull Servant or Vendread, because they're getting some really good support cards very soon. Mayakashi's getting a Link Free and a new trap that just stops the opponent summoning stuff. Same with Shuinui, they're getting the same trap, but they're also getting an indirect support card called Zombie Reborn, which, if you don't know what it does, you target a zombie in the graveyard, banish another copy of itself from the deck, and then special summon it. And since Shuinuis want to be banished, you can use their effects pretty well. So Solitaire will special summon another Shuinui. You've got Squire, which is basically Mothman. You've got Spirit Master, I believe it's called, that can destroy a card. So Shuinui and Mayakashi look to be in a really good position this year. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Just one of these, it's perfect. As I just said, the vampire engine, honestly, they can support themselves pretty well, so I'm not really too concerned with playing these at 1. And then the Phantom Knights of Silent Boots, I'll be honest, I didn't expect that Phantom Knights would be able to be played in vampires or even zombies for that matter. Not to my knowledge, I don't recall people messing around with Phantom Knights in zombies. If you have, let me know please, because I'd be interested to see how Phantom Knights could be incorporated into vampires, or even just plain zombies even more. But the main reason this card is in here is because of Phantom Knights of Fogblade and Rusty Bardiche. Sorry, it's a hard name for me to remember, sorry about that. Rusty Bardiche, Silent Boots and Free Fogblade. They're a really powerful engine that works amazingly well in this deck, because all the vampires are dark, as well as vampire suckers. So the main thing I discovered was that you can go with Vampire Sucker and any other vampire monster into Rusty Bardiche, send Silent Boots to set Fogblade, and then banish Silent Boots to add another Fogblade. And then if you have another Fogblade, you can set that. So you can get to 2 to 3 Fogblade with this deck upon the Baylordrock and Zombie World, sorry, and any other negates that you can set up with any of the other cards like Crystal Wing, which amazingly works pretty well in this deck as well. But just these are 1. I'll go into even more detail in the combo video, as I've said, but just one of these again was perfect. And then for the only hand trap I'm playing, Triple Ash, I was considering Gamma for a time, because with Solitaire you tribute it and then you chain Gamma to stop it being ashed, or Droll if the opponent tries to Droll, or just any hand trap in general. And then you go into something like Chaos Ruler or Savage or any other level 8 synchro that you feel like playing. But the problem is, a lot of the time you will have monsters on the field. Since Solitaire, you have I'd go as far to say that Ghost is probably just as good as Solitaire, because it speeds the Vampire engine up a lot, and you can just get so much. You have so much to gain from Vampire Ghost, and since you'll have a monster on the field, you can't use Gamma to stop any hand traps. Now, I know it is really good with Solitaire, but in this deck, it's only good with Solitaire, and I didn't want to take that risk. I didn't think it was all that. I didn't think it was worth risking, because with Ash, there's like no requirements needed. Just if your opponent tries to send something, create something, you can just stop them. But with Gamma, yes, it's good to stop all manner of monsters, but the fact that you have to control no monsters, even on your turn, if your opponent tries to like Ash you or anything like that, it's just really annoying. So just Ash on its own, I found that was just fine. So Triple Ash, just a really good hand trap overall, honestly. And also, if you use that, you can trick a Bailodrock. That's it for the monsters. Now I'm going to go onto the spells. For the spells, I have triple Vampire's Domain and one Vampire's Desires. Desires is more of a, I can't remember if I played this in my old profile or not. I don't think I did, since it's a relatively new addition to the deck. The main effect we're looking at is its Foolish Burial effect, because this card is a Foolish Burial and Monster Reborn in one. However, the Foolish Burial effect is the one you'll be using more often than the Monster Reborn effect, if not always, because the Monster Reborn effect requires you to send a monster from your field to the graveyard, and you can only special summon vampires from the graveyard. Now, vampires, yes, they do want to be special summoned so you can use their effects, but they have ways of summoning themselves. So the majority of the time I wouldn't use the Monster Reborn effect unless you're in a position where you need to. The Foolish Burial effect is a lot better because you can target a vampire or any monster you control, and then send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level than that monster, and then that monster you control becomes the level of the sent vampire. So the main way we use this card in this deck is with that 2-card combo where we send Retainer to the graveyard, and then once we summon it, we search this out to then target the Familiar or Retainer, send another Familiar or Retainer that we will then revive with Scarlet Scourge, use Vampire Grace's effect to special summon itself, and then go into Beatrice and then Rusty Bardiche. And again, more detail there'll be more detail on that in the combo video. Triple Vampire's Domain, really good card. You can pay 500 life points and you get an additional normal summon this turn for a vampire, even if this card leaves the field. When I was testing with it, there were situations where I would have to activate this first, and then I could send it from the field to the graveyard because of Familiar or Retainer. And then because this says I still get the normal summon even if this card leaves the field, I could then normal summon like the Shadow Vampire or the Scarlet Scourge, or even the new Vampire Ghost, depending on what the situation was. And this, again, this is part of the 3-card combo, which is a bit long, so just to make sure this video isn't too long, I'll have a separate video for combos, as I've kept saying, sorry. But 3 Domain and 1 Desires, honestly, this is probably the best ratio. 2 Domain would probably be fine as well if you want to throw in a second Bailodrock or a second Scarlet Scourge or another tech card. then 2 Domain is also fine, or if you want to play Second Desires, that's good as well. Domain also has another effect where each time a vampire monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you gain that amount of life points. So it's a good card, it gives you an additional normal summon for a vampire and allows you to gain more life points, which with vampires you're going to be paying a lot of life points since they all require you to pay life points. Scarlet Scourge requires you to pay 1000. Ghost, Familiar, Retainer, you have to pay 500. Grace, you have to pay 2000. So you're going to be prepared to pay a lot of life points if you're playing vampires. And also, one of the biggest risks when you're playing this deck is losing to time. That's the biggest risk you run with this deck. And losing to time, honestly, is the worst feeling in the world when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, no, I would say the second worst feeling in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is losing to time. Worst feeling in the world with playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going against Mystic Mine. That's the worst feeling ever in Yu-Gi-Oh! But Triple Domain and 1 Desires, honestly, they're fine the way they are. For the next card, as you probably already know, is Triple Zombie World. This is a zombie deck, so Zombie World at 3 is kind of mandatory. But it does exactly what it says. It turns everything on the field and in the graveyard into zombies. It's also searchable with Necrod Banshee, but opening up with it is just a lot better. And against a few other decks, this card is perfect because against decks like Dinosaurs, Tri Brigade, Dragon Link, a couple of Cyberse decks as well, and especially Flounder Freeze, this card almost completely shuts them down. When it comes to Flounder Freeze, this card completely stops them from playing because they can't tribute summon their monsters, and Zombie World requires each player to tribute monsters. Sorry, you can only tribute summon monsters so long as they're zombies. And since no Flounder Freeze monsters are zombies, at least yet, who knows, we might get a Flounder Freeze zombie in the future. That'd be weird. They can't play whatsoever with Zombie World on the field. And then the one Foolish Burial, just to help speed up the deck so you can get your vampires, Banshee, Glow Up Bloom into the graveyard, or even Baylor Drop depending on what the situation is. And that's it for the spells. For the traps, I am playing 1 Vampire Domination and triple Phantom Knights of Fogblade. Vampire Domination is absolutely amazing because it's basically an Omni Negate if you control a vampire. And we have a ton of vampires in the deck, so the majority of the time you're going to have a vampire on the field, so this card is active. And also, if you negate a monster effect with this, you gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. So say you negate something like Darkness Metal Dragon, you'll then gain 2,800 life points, or Borreload Dragon, you'll then gain 3,000 life points. So Vampire Domination, just an absolutely amazing card to have in the deck, and it's also really good against cards that your monsters can't interact with. So cards like Dark Ruler No More, this card is perfect for countering since your monsters can't activate their effects in response to Dark Ruler No More's activation, and also against Forbidden Droplets if the opponent doesn't discard any traps. So you can use this to save your entire field, which in a lot of situations really help. So Vampire Domination, absolutely amazing card. And what I might do in the future is I might bump this to 2 and then drop this to 2 as well, so I've got a sort of balanced trap lineup of Domination and Fogblade. Fogblade at 3, this card is also amazing. You can search this as Rusty Bardiche, and it's part of a 2-card combo as well. It's also searchable with Silent Boots, and if you open up with just 1 on its own, that's even better. So potentially you can get up to 3 Fogblade, which is just amazing. It's basically a really good infinite impermanence. You target a monster on the field, it has its effects negated, it can't attack, but also I can't target it for attacks. We do have Baylordrock in the deck though, which can help with that, since when I activate a zombie monster's effect, I can use Baylordrock to then banish the monster whose effects are negated. And that's it for the main deck. Now I'm going to go onto the extra deck. For the extra deck, I have one Vampire Sucker and one Avenged Savior. Vampire Sucker is probably one of the best zombie link monsters that we have in the game at the moment, next to the Mayakashi Link 4. Its effect is pretty simple, at least the one that we're focused on most of the time. When a zombie monster is special summoned from the graveyard, you get to draw a card. Most of the time that will be during the opponent's standby phase when you bring back Balodrock. You can then chain this to then draw a card and hopefully get into something like Ash Blossom as an extra interruption or an extender for next time. And then one Avenged Savior, just really good for getting over problematic monsters by sending monsters from your deck to the graveyard, and then that monster loses attack based on that monster's level. One Rusty Bardiche. This card in this deck is absolutely amazing. The main way we go into this is using Vampire Sucker or just free vampire or zombie monsters to then summon this. Because all of the vampire monsters are dark and this requires 2+ dark monsters. So you could go from Sucker and something like Shadow Vampire into this and then set up the 2 Fogblade, or 3 if you have a spare Fogblade in your hand. And honestly, I was really surprised that this card worked as well as it does in Vampires. But I'm just really glad that it does, because it is such a useful card for setting up interruptions. Then we've got the 2 Nightmares, Unicorn and Phoenix, just good for getting over problematic cards. Got the Crystalline Halqifibrax and the 1 Linkuriboh. Halqifibrax is part of a combo where you can set up itself with Balodrock, Zombie World, and then go into something like Sun Saga. Most of the time, well no, all the time you're going to be summoning, when you summon Halqifibrax, you're going to be summoning Glow Up Bloom, and then you go into Linkuriboh using Glow Up Bloom, and then use Glow Up Bloom's effect to special summon Balodrock from your deck, and then you use Linkuriboh and Balodrock to go into Vampire Sucker. We also have Familiar, which can become Linkuriboh as well, so then if you wanted to, you could revive the Familiar from your graveyard by sending a vampire card from your hand or field to the graveyard. And that's it for the Link monsters. For the Synchros, I am playing 1 Crystal Wing. How we summon this I'll get to in just a second, but it is an amazing card going first, just being able to negate any monster and destroy it, and then also gain its attack points is just a really good card to end on. The 1 Borreload Savage, there are ways to go into this card in the deck with the 3 card combo, depending on the level of the vampire monster that you discarded. If it was level 3, then you can then go into this. If it was level 2, you could then go into something like Dawn Dragster. Or if you wanted, you could just go into Ultimate Tizoken with Unizombie by making it level 5 and Shadow Vampire. And again, I'll go into even more detail in that in the combo video. 1 Sun Saga. You summon this using Halqifibrax effect by banishing it to special summon Formula Synchron, and then use Formula Synchron and Balodrock to then summon this, then use this effect to return your Formula Synchron from the graveyard back to your extra deck, and then blow up a card on the opponent's field. 1 Herald of the Arclight. There are ways to go into this using Halqifibrax. It's very similar to setting up Sun Saga. If you have Retainer on the field, you can then banish the Halqifibrax, special Formula Synchron, and then use the Formula Synchron and Retainer to special summon this, so you can get a Macrocosmos and an Omnigate in 1. 1 Dawn Dragster. Again, for the combo, you can either go into this or Savage Dragon, depending on the level of the monster you discarded. 1 Formula Synchron. As I've explained, you summon it with Halqifibrax, then use this effect, you can draw a card, and then quick synchro into either Sun Saga or Herald of the Arclight, depending on what your field is like. And I will be siding, if I take this deck to my locals, I will be siding the TG Wonder Magician. So if I need to get rid of a problematic spell trap card that the opponent would have, I can use Halqifibrax to special summon Wonder Magician and then get rid of that spell or trap card. And then quick synchro into something that I need. And then the 1 Ultimate Tizoken. This is actually a lot easier to summon in this deck than I originally thought, because with the 3 card combo, you have Unizombie and Shadow Vampire. Shadow Vampire is a level 5, and Unizombie you can turn into a level 5 if you use both its effects and target itself. So you go from both of those two, you summon Ultimate Zoken, and then once you set a Fog Blade, you can then use this effect to summon Crystal Wing. I would prefer it a lot more if you could also summon Savage with its effect. Well, you can summon it, but the effect where it equips a Link monster and then can negate 2 cards by removing 2 counters won't go off, since it only gets that effect off if it's synchro summoned, and Tzolk'in doesn't say it is synchro summoned. So I have to settle for Crystal Wing. For Crystal Wing, honestly, it's almost just as good as Savage, if not just as good, albeit you can only negate a monster effect, but Crystal Wing on its own is still a really good card to end on. And then for the last card in this deck, I'm playing the 1 Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal. This card is absolutely amazing. The main way you go into this is using Vampire Scarlet Scourge and Vampire Grace. And then you use this effect, being a quick effect, to set up your zombie world, or you can send an extender depending on what the situation is like. And then during the standby phase of the opponent's turn, you can set up Baelodruk by sending Baelodruk to the graveyard, and then during the standby, Baelodruk will trigger, and then you can special summon it from the graveyard, so you can get 2 negates from that. And one more thing, to begin with, I never realised how versatile this card is. And what I mean by that is, not only is it good in vampires, but I've been testing it in Virtual World and Adamant Pacers as well. With Virtual World, I can use it to set up Zombie World and Baelodruk. Now that might sound a bit weird, but with the decks that we have at the moment, we have a lot of Dragon Link, Dinosaurs, Tribe Brigade, and especially Thunderfreeze. So just setting up Zombie World, and on top of that, you can set up Baelodruk with an already pre-established field, including Crystal Wing with Tzolk'in and a couple of other negates. That's absolutely amazing, and it completely throws the opponent off, because most of the time you don't see Zombie World and Virtual World being played together in the same deck. But with Beatrice, you can, because Virtual World has a ton of level 6s and they're not that restrictive, other than just locking you out of Link monsters. And with Adamantipator, it's the same thing. I can set up Zombie World and Baelodruk, so upon having an already pre-established field with possibly Savage and Crystal Wing and a 3 negate Appaloosa, I can then set up Zombie World and Baelodruk, which will give me another 2 negates, or even Fossil Warrior Skull King, because I've been playing the Fossil engine in Adamantipator's and I really love the Fossil engine. And do expect a Virtual World and Adamantipator deck profile at some point. With Virtual World, I'm just waiting to get a few more cards before I make the deck profile, and with Adamantipator's, I want to wait until we get the new fossil stuff in the TCG. So like the fossil machines and the Flint Dragon monster. So then I honestly believe that fossil Adamantipator's will be an absolutely terrifying deck to go against. But sorry if I was getting off track there, I just really wanted to talk about that for a second. Beatrice at 1, absolutely amazing card in this deck, and I can't wait to see what other decks I can test it in as well, because it is such a versatile card. Anyway, that is it for the deck profile. Thank you so much for watching. The combo video won't be long after this, I promise you, and I'll go into so much detail with the combos and what you can do with the deck, and also a couple of other techs that you can play in the deck as well. Let me know what you thought of this deck profile and where you think I could improve, and if there's a zombie deck profile, like say if you want to see like a mixture of other decks with Zombie World, let me know and I'll see if I can make that deck profile. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I'll talk to you all in the next video. Take care. second I see Mystic Mine, my heart drops down into my stomach. Every single time. Every time I see Mystic Mine, I can't help it. My brain, it explodes. I can't take it. I hate Mystic Mine. And I want to find the person who thought Mystic Mine was a good idea to be printed. And I want to kick him in the nuts. If it's a man. If it's a man, I'm kicking him in the nuts. If it's not, well, I can't kick them in the nuts.